This episode of our This Week in XR podcast is sponsored by Zapper. Zapper is one of the world's leading XR companies. Over the past 12 years, they've won numerous awards for memorable campaigns. They've democratized AR by making tools and SDKs that anyone can use. And they created ZapBox, the world's most affordable mixed reality headset. Most recently, Zapper worked with Unilever to create an enhanced QR code called Accessible QR, which enables packaged goods to speak to the blind and partially sighted. If you're thinking XR, give the team at Zapper a call or visit zapper.com to see how they can help you on your XR journey. Good morning, everybody. I'm Charlie Fink here with Ted Schilowitz for This Week in XR. It is Monday, June 10th. We blew off Friday's episode because we had to shift the time and our guest couldn't make it, Ori Inbar. It's our annual curtain raiser for AWE, Augmented World Expo. It's one of the most important events in our world and in the world of spatial computing because it is not, precisely because it is not owned by one company, but because it's, the whole of the industry. And many of those companies are there, although they're not exhibiting. Roni is not with us today, but Ori will be joining us in about 10 minutes. So great news week.
Yeah, and in about an hour, there'll be another wave of news because we're an hour away from the Apple keynote. So we happen to be doing our podcast on Monday right before the WWDC.
I know it's sort of like, but we'll be back on Friday, but
We'll
we're
have to do a
not going to be
report.
very,
Yes.
this show is not going to be very relevant other than for, but I think we all know what's coming and it will be a crushing disappointment if it isn't the
Yeah.
AI upgrade of Siri. And of
Yeah.
course, the dream of Siri is that you always could be like Martin Scorsese in the 2012 ad where he asked Siri to make a reservation for him.
Right.
Like the most basic assistant thing. But the problem with chatbots is they don't operate the apps on your phone. And that is the great advantage that the Apple ecosystem has. So, unfortunately, Apple has not been able in 10 years to figure out how to do that. So, if they could figure that out, I think it would change thinking about the smartphone in a pretty dramatic way.
Well, and Apple rides a really interesting line around privacy and their perception of privacy, their ethics around privacy, on-prem device, off-prem, how the data gets used. They play a slightly different game, or at least they purport to use that as a marketing tool and a presentation tool, which we as Apple fans largely believe, at least for the most part, with a sort of healthy amount of skepticism. But realistically, we think it works. And part of
Yeah,
why
this would be a
it's such
tremendously invasive relationship. And so it would have to be like 500% air gap secure because now you've got an app that could tell anybody if you're asleep. I mean,
part of what makes Siri such a train wreck is it's because it's so ethically sound. It's because it's so locked down. It uses your device hardware to do most of the work. And therefore, your texting is like only 70% right. You have to go back and fix things. It never really works the way it's supposed to. Whereas, like if we looked at the Zoom, the captions, the real-time captions of this, it would be 100% accurate. It's scary how good it is. And most of the Google devices, Samsung devices have moved on, and people just don't seem to care as much. They would like the convenience and the workability of the device versus the security of the device. So there we sit.
this is going to change, and Apple knows that.
Yeah.
So that is why they're willing to take this kind of a risk. But they said they were going to do it 10 years ago. So here we go.
Well, and the big thing we have to keep a very close eye on if you track Apple's market cap, if you're an investor and so forth and so on, is will this be a moment where they say to get all these new capabilities, you have to upgrade to a new device because we're building specialized hardware that links to the software. Therefore, your iPhone 15 will not work. And anything past that, you're going to be on the old version of Siri.
Right. And maybe you'll have maybe you'll just pay a premium for that. Maybe you'll just, get the, the S will start to, it'll be 18 GPT and you have to upgrade to a 16.
We'll just have to see. If it's a realistic hardware upgrade, it'll probably be a boon for Apple because a lot of people will move to it. And if it's just a software upgrade, maybe not. So we'll have to
I
see.
well, I mean, I get a new iPhone every 2 years. I'm on that Verizon plan, not to promote it because uh, not to promote Verizon over
Maybe
it,
they'll be a
but
sponsor of the
I,
podcast.
I
Let's
I
promote it.
mean, I mean, I pay handsomely for it.
That's
So,
true.
so I expect I would get sometime in the fall the new device. So I'm pretty excited to hear. I mean, like I said, if that's not it, Ted, if that's not it, Apple is going to take a hit.
Well, and then the other big question is, will they talk at all about Vision Pro? Will they make any statements about what they're
Oof.
working on, how they're developing more software, more applications, a better
I think that they
ecosystem?
probably will throw that in the laundry list after the keynote, where they have the lesser but still senior executives talking about their individual,
Right.
the OS and the maps and
EP, the minor league guy comes up and talks about Vision
well, they're
OS.
not, I mean, these are not minor league people, obviously, but Apple has a lot of senior people running around. And so some of
Mhm.
them, if they own a particular product or business line of business, they get to be up there in the
Yeah,
keynote. I would
they seem to.
imagine inside the company, it's tremendously prestigious.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
So, okay, let's get to a couple of other news stories before we bring in Ori. And in addition to Apple, we have our Pika Labs, which is the two students from Stanford who are going head to head with Runway
Yeah.
and OpenAI.
Yeah.
And and Sora, and they just raised 80 million. Runway recently raised a ton of money too. So I guess these two companies are going to go head to head on the text to video. There was a new company in China that just came out on Friday, um, which makes the second company in China that declared it could do text to video. In this particular case, I wish I could remember the name of it. You have to have a Chinese email address, but it still sounds extraordinary. And so obviously, if you're going to play this game with deep-pocketed companies like that, you really have to raise a lot of money.
Well, the longer Sora holds out and not sort of doing a mass release for everybody to use this, because I think they're concerned about the GPU usage, the cost, the ethics, all the things, then all of a
There
sudden
would have to be a
it'll
whole
spring
different
up.
structure around it if they had it. It
All
couldn't
these,
be like
all
Dolly.
Runway wins because they're playing a slightly different game than Sora right now, and at some point, Sora will probably just have to release the hounds, as they say, and see what happens.
Well, they
Because
could also limit the length of the videos, which would reduce the CPU use. They may treat the longer version the way they treat the API that you get if you're a business.
Mhm. Oh, the other, so speaking of this touch point, the other significant story this week was that for a moment, a few days ago, NVIDIA was the most valuable company on planet Earth, overtaking Microsoft and
When
Apple.
they just completed their 10-for-1 stock split, so it's not going to take long for them to get there.
Yeah, yeah. Well, it's a fascinating moment in time. Yeah.
Yeah, no kidding. But NVIDIA, pretty incredible company. They're making so much money that their PE actually makes sense now, which is, I mean, it used to be like, 150 or something crazy that you would anticipate with a super high growth company. So that was a big bet at the time back in 2022.
Sure.
And of course, we know it's gone up more than 400% since then. So aside from Pika Labs, let's see. Oh, 12 Labs.
Mhm.
This is a company that is backed by NVIDIA that reads. It's a little bit, it reminded me of Roy Taylor's company because it reads and understands existing video, which is a pretty important technology, I think.
Yeah, I've had a couple of meetings with them. That's an interesting space. The idea that you can take this plethora of existing video and essentially put analytics around it, study it, deliver it in various ways, study its revenue capabilities and so forth and so on. They're small, but they seem to have a lot of backing and a lot of interest in that space. So that's an interesting.
So here's somebody I just wanted to give a big shout out to Wevr. The
Mm,
venerated VR content company raised 3.5 million. I know it sounds like chicken feed in these worlds of massive AI valuations, but I'm really happy for those guys. The Blue is still 8 years later one of the seminal VR
absolutely.
experiences. So and they did a great version of it with the late Dreamscape location
Mhm,
based.
mhm.
So good luck to them. And oh, here's oh yeah, layoffs, Microsoft mixed reality. That one, not unexpected. They're gonna, I mean, it's all about IVAS at this point.
Yeah.
They answered a query about the state of the mixed reality initiative, and the answer was we're going to support IVAS no matter what.
Mm.
So the fact that that was the answer says to me, if the IVAS goes south, so goes Microsoft mixed
The whole
reality.
thing drops out. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, I think then they'll just say blame it on AI and say we just couldn't sustain the investment in AI is going to return 100x.
And for Microsoft, mixed reality is still just a tiny little bubble. You know, if they right-sized it, it would actually make sense for Microsoft to continue with a lot of their pursuits. It's just difficult for Microsoft to do anything small like a startup and let it develop and cultivate into a normalized, logical business. They
Well,
just don't have.
they didn't want to get have another another mobile moment where they got left
I get
out.
it, but there's
And once
plenty
they
of.
determined that that wasn't what was going on,
Yeah.
they head for the hills. Google did the same thing.
Yeah, I get it. But there's plenty of, as you and I know, in the industrial realms, there's plenty of multi-million-dollar businesses that use this capabilities to great success. But they're not going to be $100 million sectors or $1 billion sectors anytime soon, or maybe ever.
Right.
And they're more
There's
exotic
too much
and
friction.
too much, and just it's not Microsoft's game, so they'll leave it to the little guys. Good, actually, it's a good thing. I think it's actually a good thing.
So, and here's someone who may take advantage of it. Palmer Luckey says he's working on a new headset. And what's more, it's going to be announced at AWE.
Yeah, I know. That'll be very interesting to see him in his shorts and his flip flops,
So
kicking around a new headset. So good.
the room will be packed.
Mm.
So here's the last one, and then we'll bring in Ori. The guy who runs Sony, I don't know. You must know this guy, Tony Vinciera. Is that his name? He runs Sony. He's the CEO of Sony, and he
Okay.
said that Sony is all in on AI. He said the movies cost too much, and we are going to
Oh
lean
yes. Oh,
way
you're
into
talking about Sony
AI.
Pictures. Yeah, yeah. You're talking about Sony
I'm
Pictures.
talking
Yeah,
about
yeah,
Sony Pictures.
yeah, yeah.
So this is on the eve of a negotiation with IATSE
Yeah.
which is the film workers union, which is it's got to be a drawn out strike because they're going to try and
We'll
figure
see.
out how to prevent studios from replacing sets.
Yeah, it doesn't. I don't know. It's a much more complicated issue. It doesn't seem like the industry, at least in Los Angeles, is ready to tolerate another strike. They want work and they need to work. And look, I don't even know where to start here, right? I mean, AI is a valid technology that will be used for valid reasons as well as invalid reasons. It will change things. Smart people will learn to adapt and become proficient in these tools and use them to their benefit. And there will be a section of the labor force that will just be moved and relegated out. And this is nothing new. This happens every 10 or 15 years. You get a slightly new technology. Arguably, this one could be more dramatic than others, like the digital cinema revolution, the idea of LED walls replacing certain sets, the idea of computer VFX replacing guys that build clay models
Well,
and
I'll just give you my hot take and then let's bring in Ori.
okay.
I think the problem that the motion picture industry is having is that people have appointments with other screens.
Yes, of course.
And so, the celebrities are being born on social media. Well, my son is a social media
Yes, of
influencer.
course.
That's money that used to run, that he gets paid directly from brands that should have run or traditionally ran through media companies and media aggregators. And that is just not true anymore. And I don't know how Hollywood can compete with that. It has to be figured out because the old model of distribution and the streaming model aren't sustainable
Yeah,
anymore.
yeah. I mean, I talk
And
about
so
this
when
all the
people
time.
say there's less work in Hollywood, I think yes, AI, but really the business structure isn't correct anymore. And the incentives aren't correct. And the studios tried to get valued like tech companies, and it hasn't worked out. And
Yeah.
so they kicked the can down the road through the pandemic, but now they've there's a reckoning coming, and they have to think differently about their business. And I think that's the threat to film workers and television workers, much more so than AI. Uh,
Well, I mean, when you boil it down, we should do a whole show on this if we want to. Content glut has all kinds of downstream effects. The amount of content that we create, we allow to create, that is created, and the way that it can live forever on various platforms without the need for a moment where you've got to watch it or it disappears, it's gone, has fundamentally changed the entire industry.
Yes.
It has broadened it. It has made more people the ability to make some sort of living at it, but it has taken away the very top of that pyramid and shrunk it down,
Yeah.
and sort of disabled it. So it's a much longer discussion of how this all works, which of course I live in every day of my life, but worth knowing more about.
Yeah, well, that's why I brought it up, because this is going to be a hot topic for quite a while for us.
But now let's get back to
let's get back to AWE.
Yeah.
So, and like all good old-fashioned tech conferences, AWE also has great parties.
Mm-hmm. Yes. This year it's in Long Beach. It's been in Silicon Valley forever, for as long as I can remember.
15 years.
Yeah. And now they're moving it to Long Beach. So I guess they're going to focus a little more on the entertainment side of this technology as opposed to the enterprise side. I don't know. I don't know why. I guess we'll ask Ori why the move to Long Beach. I guess we're going to find out.
I think they felt that they had outgrown the convention center in Santa Clara that was across the street from the amusement park and the football stadium.
Yeah, of course, yeah. But it definitely drew the Silicon Valley crowd. I mean, it was the Y Combinator guys and all the different.
It's going to be different because of the. You're absolutely right. It's going to be the LA crowd versus the Silicon Valley crowd.
Yeah, so I guess we're going to find out.
That's why we're getting Palmer Luckey lives in Irvine. He's right next.
And that's why we're going right to the source. Ori.
Yeah. Ori, welcome.
Hey guys.
I should say welcome back.
Ted.
How are you?
I'm doing well. It's a busy week, as you can imagine.
I'm sure. I'm amazed you even have time for us, but we appreciate it.
We were laughing, thinking that the next thing that we're going to do when we get off this call is tune into the Apple keynote and find out more about how Siri is going to take over our lives.
Yeah. So we were just speculating on why the move of AWE to Long Beach. Before you do that, for our listeners, maybe explain who you are, what your role is at this conference, what this conference is, and then tell us why you're moving to Long Beach from Silicon Valley.
Sounds good. I'm Ori Inbar. I am the co-founder of AWE, as well as Super Ventures, a fund dedicated to investing in AR and VR companies. And, I've been a champion of this industry for now 18 years. Started AWE back in 2010 in Santa Clara, 300 people in a room. So started very small, but from there it grew along with the industry in the past 15 years. And last year we just were bursting at the seams in Santa Clara. So we were looking for a bigger, brighter venue, and we found Long Beach, which is a truly fantastic location. Not just the venue itself, but also everything around it. It's so much more lively and interesting and fun, and there's a beach nearby, so it's we're really looking forward to this year's.
Yeah, it's Charlie in my hometown. So
exactly.
But so it doesn't have anything to do with trying to refocus the conference or find a slightly different audience or a different.
Right, because we were just saying the Silicon Valley crowd could sort of drop in, and now instead you've got the LA crowd dropping in.
That's right. I mean, I think it's kind of a side effect of this move that we really embraced, kind of really trying to get the entire entertainment industry to kind of pay attention to look into XR in more detail than they have so far. So yeah, I think you definitely see this in the kind of the nature of the event. We'll have a lot more of these folks than the typical Silicon Valley folks.
Right. It'll be interesting to see how it shakes out. I mean, Charlie and I are veterans, right? We go every year. It's for us, it's actually more important than CES and NAB. It's because it's such an interesting, more vertical conference. All the speeches are very specific to this target, to this audience. You focus on enterprise, entertainment, heavy and light industry, things that are really practical. But there's always a couple of surprises, right? There's always some new headsets that come out, some new people in the industry. Is there anything you can tease us with or tease our listeners with that would be exciting that they want to make sure they get a ticket for AWE and go to it?
Well, in terms of surprises, you'll have to wait and see. But
tried, Charlie. I did my best shot.
The vision workshop that is actually happening the day before the event is going to be really exciting. I think it's probably going to be the largest collection of the Vision Pro in one place, except outside of the Apple campus. So that's going to be cool. And by the way, really looking forward to seeing what Apple announces in terms of new content and new additions to Vision OS in just a little bit.
Us as well. Yeah.
Yeah, that was the topic last year, was the excitement over the Vision Pro's impending launch, and of course the Quest 3, which is a mixed reality device as much as it is a VR device. So is there going to be a lot of content there related to the Quest 3? I think not Apple, Meta is going to be demoing some apps on the floor, right?
That's right. Yeah, Meta has a pretty strong presence, but more interesting is the fact that there's a bunch of developers, and I think the most prevalent device you'll see on the floor is probably the Quest 3 and many Vision Pro. So yeah, I mean, I think if you look at this year with these two devices and everything else that is happening around it, it's a big year for XR. I think there's no doubt around it, and not just the hardware itself that is better than ever, but also the content is being developed and the opportunities for developers. I think that's the big story this year that, Andreessen Horowitz pointed out very clearly that the revenue that developers can get out of building for these platforms is something that hasn't been matched since kind of the early days of the iPhone. So that's very exciting for the event this year.
Do you have your opinions? I see you have an Apple Vision Pro. I have one. I think mine's in my other room today because I was using it last night. Any overall thoughts from your experience and your take on that device, where it might be headed, what its strengths and weaknesses are?
Sure, in just 30 seconds, right?
Yeah, 30 seconds, 3 minutes.
No, I mean, I think I love it. I mean, I think it delivered on everything that I was hoping it would deliver. I knew it would initially target more developers than, just consumers, just because of the price point and the fact that it's first device from Apple. But I mean, I've been enjoying it more than any other device I've ever tried, and on all levels, the quality, the interaction, the fact that you don't have controllers. I love that part. And the fact that, I may even show some of that during the opening keynote, but don't tell anybody.
Good. All right. Well, there's a little nugget for us.
If you haven't been to AWE, Ori famously in his opening keynote pulls off some kind of technology trick as well as some clever verbal trope. So we look forward to that every year. And usually it is a surprise, I would say. I don't think I've ever really known what to expect until Ori steps on stage. So if that excites you, that and Palmer Luckey supposedly going to announce a new headset that he's developing,
yeah,
which was also a great plug for AWE. So I guess thank you, Palmer.
Yeah. Oh, that's a big surprise. No one was expecting that. I mean, he's focused on his new company, Andrew, and which is very different in many ways. So it's going to be
maybe he's still hacking away in his trailer.
What's that?
I'm curious.
Maybe he's still hacking away in his trailer.
Yeah. Yes. I'm curious, both Charlie and Ori, have you seen or heard tale of this new 4K visor headset that claims to have the same visual quality or better than the Apple headset at a much, much lower price point? Ori, have you had a chance to use it or see it or interface with those guys? Will they have a presence at AWE?
Not yet, and I'm not aware of them being there, although we've seen some guerrilla exhibitors walking the floor in past years, so who knows?
Yeah, this doesn't look like a guerrilla effort. I think it's well funded and probably worth just keeping a close eye on. It's just the company's called Visor. It's actually from the group that does the software called Amidst, which is that enterprise sort of software that you can gather, and like there's many groups that do that. But they took a hardware play, sort of like Big Screen, made a hardware play. They had their software for watching movies in VR, and then they made this very ultra lightweight VR headset, high res VR headset. So I'm very curious how that's going to to play out in the marketplace. It's an interesting one.
Yeah, we'll see definitely some surprises in that sense. Although, you know, we have to be a bit skeptic about software companies that all of a sudden jump on the bandwagon of the hardware side. We've seen it go wrong in the past in many cases that I'm not going to list here. But who knows? You know, maybe it's going to be a good surprise. I'm with you.
It's just worth keeping an eye on for sure.
The perspective headset that I'm the most excited about is Apple's. I mean, what is the next step after the Vision Pro? How do you, I mean, okay, I 1000% agree with you, Ori. It was a developer device that for whatever reason they decided to market as a consumer device. I think that probably is because to a hammer, everything looks like a nail. I mean, they can't do it any other way. But it's very much a developer headset. So of course the question is, okay, so you're going to entice developers, you're going to give them a platform to develop for, and then
what?
right, and then Siri 10 years, or is it, you know, going to be you know, a lot more instant than that?
The next version, you mean?
The consumer version, the real consumer version that cost 1,000 something.
Yeah, I think, you know, they learned a lot over the last year, and they will continue to learn next few months. And then we'll see. I mean, I expect that the next version will come relatively soon. So, you know, maybe sometime next year it will be announced. And it will tackle all these, I mean, not everything that we wanted to tackle, but the fact that, you know, something a bit more consumer oriented, a bit more affordable, and kind of, but kind of building on all the good things that it has offered. They, you know, in terms of entertainment, there's nothing that comes close to it. And, you know, the What If experience from Disney Marvel is a great example of that. I think it's really a perfect experience for that kind of audience. But on the other hand, you know, we said it's for developers, but also for enterprises, which actually Tim Cook mentioned a few times in the last couple of months that like over 50% of Fortune 100 have already adopted it. And I suspect that probably more will be announced today at the in the keynote. Because it's, you know, price is usually not a big issue for enterprises, at least not for, you know, the pilot stages. So, and it's being adopted, you know, so things like, you know, digital twins and training that have been really big in enterprises are I think are going to adopt this device even now, even before we have the more consumer-oriented version.
If I could put my like dreamer hat on, it'll never ever happen. But man, in 45 minutes from now, if Tim Cook comes on stage and goes, we got a ton of good feedback from our first generation Apple Vision Pro. We have learned what we did wrong. We understand that the ergonomics are really problematic for many, many people. So instead of the typical 2 to 3 year waiting period that you're going to have to get new hardware, we fast tracked it. And we're going to give a deep discount to anybody that bought an initial Vision Pro. And we get it. We understand where we screwed up, and we're going to just course correct really fast. That would be my dream come true.
That is.
Well, I think it's a bit of a pipe dream. First, because they never apologize or admit mistakes. That's the first thing. They only improve. But there's actually a different dream that I have, which also will not happen, and that is Apple announcing that they will open access to the camera for app developers, which is currently a huge limitation to really doing the big things that we all are dreaming about in spatial computing.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah.
New at AWE this year, the AWE Hall of Fame.
Oh, yeah.
So how did you decide? Because, you know, these kinds of lists, and by the way, I'm not criticizing the list. I think it's a good list, but it's a hard list to do because of two reasons. One is, of course, there's 1,000 people who should be on that list.
Absolutely.
Second of all, there are people who were excluded for that list because certain judges didn't like them. Maybe next year judges will not judge people as harshly, but some people were left off the list that shouldn't have been. And then there were some people that just didn't fit, right? Or there was somebody who was in their specialty who was more senior to them. So is there going to be 200, another 100 next year? And so that's the second question. But the first one is, who was on the panel and how did you guys figure it out?
You're right. It was a really tough thing to do. It's really easy to say, it's too tough, let's not do it. But after 15 years of AWE, I felt like we have to do it. We should have done it 15 years ago, honestly.
Yeah.
And then the list would have been growing kind of more organically. So we had to kind of catch up. So what we initially chose was mostly people that have been kind of the first few decades of XR, to kind of catch up on all those that we have never really recognized. And there are a lot of organizations or awards that recognize like an individual here and there, but I felt like you need to have a much stronger list, broader list to really cover all the different things that happened. So that's why it's 100 and not just 2 or 3. But you're right. I mean, I think almost any attendee of AWE in the last few years is a potential pioneer to be recognized at this event, and many of them will be in the future. Is it going to be another 100 next year? I don't know. I doubt it. I think it will be a bit more measured. But the good news is it's now it's people are aware of it. They know how to submit recommendations for pioneers that could be joining it next year. And the vetting is really, I mean, I have to say, so I'm to blame. If someone is pissed off about not being on the list, it's me. It's all me. But we had help with.
Well, I thought you were. By the way, I thought you nobly left yourself off the list.
I said, why are you not on the list?
Because it would be silly. Because everybody knows
Unseemly.
Ori is AWE.
Yeah, unseemly.
I can't be on the list. But we used a lot of people on the list to help vet the list, right? So everybody had a chance to kind of vet it, but I would say, we have probably about 10 or 15 that were really engaged and help us. Jackie Morey, for example, help us uncover a lot of the female pioneers that nobody's heard of.
Mm-hmm.
And that was something that I had to ensure that happens. Avi Barziv was very instrumental, Tom Furness, and many others really on the list. And I have to say, I got some angry notes from people. How come I'm not on the list? and my first reaction, which I did not tell them, is that one of the criterion is humility.
If you have to bet, if you have
didn't
to
help
ask
yourself
why
with
you're
that,
not on
but
the list,
if other people recommend you, of course, you'll be considered. And again, I think it's going to get harder and harder because there are literally hundreds of people that should be on this list moving forward. And it's really, yes, it's an honor, it's a way to recognize, but it's really a way for us to help learn the history of XR so that we can create the future. I mean, this is really the main purpose. So, the event will include a lot of talks by some of these pioneers, a lot of kind of discussions and demos and so on that will really highlight a lot of the things that happened in the past. There's an XR museum that will highlight some of these.
I thought half the XR museum is behind you.
Some of it, yeah. But we'll have probably close to 100 devices there.
Oh, and USC is going to bring the Sensorama that they had at SIGGRAPH.
So, but only the virtual
high-leg device,
because the hardware itself is actually like I think you mentioned in your post is being remodeled, but there will be a VR experience of that as well as the Mockless Sword, the Ivan Satterland's device.
That's another VR recreation of
exactly
what the experience must have been like.
So that's another way kind of to just give people some perspective. It's some people think like it's an overnight success, it just happened, but it has such a rich history. And I was reading Ben Delaney's VR in the 90s book recently, and everything there is happening again. It's like a deja vu. All the questions, all the debates, all the struggles, we're now reliving it again. And if we look back and learn a bit more, I think we can accelerate our growth and our advancements.
Take over, Ted. I have to step away for 1 minute.
Okay. So let's talk a little bit about your background, Ori, because I think it's fascinating. You have to correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe you're from Israel, yes? And that culture, that spirit of innovation, is one of the strongest cultures on the planet. So maybe talk a little bit about how you moved, when you moved from Israel to the United States, and how AWE sort of fashioned itself. What was the reason behind it? The desire for you as an innovator to bring this to the world in this way?
Yeah, I moved to the States in '98, so almost 30 years ago, with a startup, an enterprise internet startup that I was part of. And I mean, the desire was always to come to where the things are happening, which felt, the Silicon Valley is the right place. And, I was always kind of fascinated with VR in the early 90s, but felt like, there's nothing really I can do at that time. So I had to wait a few more years. After the startup was acquired by SAP, where I spent, a few years kind of leading that internet platform, decided to leave 2007. And that's when I discovered that AR has been really hidden in many labs around the world, in a few labs around the world. And I was blown away, how come nobody knows about it? So it became kind of a mission, to try and bring it to everyone's attention. Initially, I started a company called Augmento, which developed AR games, not very different than the Pokemon Go style games in 2009 and 10. So quite early. And then it felt so lonely in AR that we said, we have to get together, the few of us that are in this field. So we, brought some folks from the academia, some of the, like 20 or 30 entrepreneurs. And actually, like I said before, 300 people in the room talking about ideas and concepts. And it felt like there's something there, but it was still very early. But again, from there, it grew to become what it is. Sort of on one hand, it's the same year that I would say the XR industry was born, 2009, 10.
Yeah.
That's when it really became commercial. And we've been kind of a reflection of the ups and downs and the growth and the pain and the successes over the years. So yeah, that's kind of the story.
Yeah, we were just talking a little bit about his background from Israel and the innovation spirit in Israel and all that stuff, Charlie. The other thing that might be interesting for you to regale is some of the really big moments at AWE over the years that you can recall that were kind of groundbreaking. Like, wow, this was a moment. This person came on stage, this thing happened, this device was shown for the first time. Do you have a couple of those little nuggets in your arsenal that you want to share to the audience that's listening?
All right, that's a good one. So I think 2010, we had the Bruce Sterling, the famous sci-fi author that kind of gave birth to cyberpunk. He was kind of one of we called him the AR prophets, the AR prophet. And he came on stage and said, it's 9 a.m. in the AR industry. I think it was probably more like 4:30 a.m. in the morning at that time. But that was a rallying cry, I think, for everyone. And we felt like, it's actually happening. Then, of course, a few years later, with Google Glass being announced, in the beginning, it was the biggest thing that ever happened in AR, of course, before the downfall of the kind of the
fallout,
cultural impact.
Yeah.
But that, from that moment, everyone knew what AR is, or at least thought they knew what it is. And that was a huge moment. Then, 2016, that was one of the biggest years, Pokemon Go becoming massive success. The
year of the HoloLens.
So first, Oculus is out, and it kind of, the rebirth of VR, which was joined at AWE as well. And yeah, and HoloLens, and it came together with Snap. They had kind of.
I mean, I remember Microsoft did a huge thing at AWE back in 2016 or 17.
Yeah, that's right. 2016 was a huge year. So it was Snap and Niantic, kind of not just with Pokemon Go, but with their platform. And that gave a huge acceleration to everything. So, you know, kind of ups and downs, ups and downs.
So you know what's interesting is, first of all, when a medium is new, and we're about to see this with AI, there are hundreds of conferences, right? Everybody and anybody who knows how to put on a conference puts on an AI conference to make some money and to gain some notoriety or whatever. So, you know, there was VR LA, and you know, not to, you know, criticize the people who did it. They did it at the time for, you know, very good reasons. So, you know, there was VR New York, VR LA, you know, all these events. And of course, they're largely gone. I think there's still VR Toronto, which is more of, I would say, an academic conference still, and much smaller, obviously, than AWE. But AWE seems to have sort of pulled together all those things that were lost by the many and sort of aggregated it all together. So we have one big show, which makes a lot more sense. Oh, and before we let you go, there was one other thing that I wanted to mention, which was Sonia Haskins, who you brought in as head of programming when Tom Emmerich went to Niantic, has done a fantastic job.
Absolutely.
Absolutely.
And
Thank
she,
you for recognizing her.
yeah, and she, like Tom, really cares.
Yeah.
You know, it's not just a job for her. She really cares. She's invested, you know, her ego and her creativity, and you know, I think she's just done a splendid job.
Absolutely. And you know, that's the reason that everybody is still around. It's because we care. We know it's a lot of hard work and passion. It doesn't happen easily at all. And by the way, I have to say that besides AWE, there's a lot of kind of smaller conferences, but they are kind of very targeted at different things. Anything from rain
Well,
dance.
sure, like Exec in Florida, which is all about military simulation.
Yeah, but I mean, there's like, you know, there's this VR chat festival happening also next week in Paris. There's, you know, the enterprise focus events. There's training events. There are vertical events. There's still a lot happening, which is actually it's a kind of a rich experience for people that are focused on a very specific niche within the XR ecosystem.
So what haven't we talked about? So we've just got a couple of minutes left in the show. What haven't we talked about that you're looking forward to this year?
Well, you know, like you said, we've invested a lot in making this experience special and spatial. That's why, you know, the motto is you'll feel spatial, we promise. And I think, you know, with 300 exhibitors, it's the largest collection ever of XR companies in one place. Over 500 speakers. This is unheard of.
Well, that is one of the great things about AWE, right? There's genuine knowledge sharing, and you know, people who are category experts anxious to share what they've learned and what they know. So I have actually in the years,
you know,
yeah, I have FOMO just because too many panels that I want to see are cross scheduled.
Yes, I know.
So
I know that's always a pain, but that's why there's video and every.
Oh yeah, we have to pimp our thing, Ted.
We do. Before you hang up, before we all go on to watch the Apple keynote and our Apple TVs in a moment, on the last day of AWE, Charlie and I will be on stage doing this in a unique fashion in front of an audience, which we've done at South by Southwest to great success, and now we're bringing our road show to AWE.
But it's episode 200, Ted. This is episode 198.
Wow.
That's episode 200. So we're going to do the episode 200 live. Sonia will be on. It'll just be people who haven't been on the show, with the exception of Sarah Hill, who was guest number one. Sarah Hill from Helium. And we did that episode in VR. It was July 2020. We did it in VR. The first few episodes were in VR. But the problem with VR is when you film it inside of VR, even using a PC camera, the quality is so diminished when you take it out of context. You know, the sound is bad, the image is bad. You know, the image, which looks so great to all of us, you know, inside the virtual world, when you feel it's sort of like filming theater, right? And when you take it out, you know, it has no context.
We can do it in the Apple Vision Pro now. The Apple Vision Pro has solved a lot of those things.
I was going to say, you know,
we can do one.
That's going to be
maybe that's show 300.
Then the industry has matured when you can do
maybe
it
that's our
inside
250ish, yeah.
Exactly. So yeah. So hopefully one or two listeners may join us. But we're looking forward to doing our thing there and seeing everybody. It's a great social event. I mean, honestly, I've made so many friends at AWE. I've learned so much. So for anybody who's getting into the industry, I think it's sort of a must attend and a crash course in, the huge number of verticals and kind of applications and ways that XR technology is being applied toward businesses as well as, many new entertainment applications.
And we thank you, Charlie and Ted, for what you're doing. It's amazing. We all learn from you as well, and we also enjoy it. It's always fun. So thank you, and keep doing it.
All right. Well, we'll see you in Long Beach on the 18th, Ori.
See you very soon.
Thanks for listening, everyone.